the papers. He's founder of Viewer and also property expert Ed Mead joins me now. Ed, good morning.
Good morning, James. How are you?
Very well indeed. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us here on TalkTV. It's much appreciated. Now, we'll talk a little bit about what's been going on and what you've been up to in due course. Meanwhile, we'll turn our attention to the front pages first before we come to the stories that you picked out. So, the Times newspaper, Truss and Sunak trade blows over tax pledges. This is all going to get quite desperate, but Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, they've escalated their battle, but it would appear as if new polling has found that Truss has now extended her lead over Sunak's 24 points. Are we just walking into a nightmare scenario in which we end up with Theresa May Mark II?
Well, in a word, yes. When you have a system that seems to be so polarised for the election of the candidate and then polarised again for the polarised for the selection by the MPs and then polarised and then chosen by the party, you've got a completely polarised setup, and I just don't understand how on earth it can be considered a sensible way of doing things. What's the average age of a Tory member? 57 or something?
I don't know, 548. The interesting thing is that when it comes to the general election, I think that the Tories are going to really struggle. And I think the problem is that Liz Truss, the Tory faithful may like her, but the problem is that her ability to connect with the rest of the population, I think, could very well be stilted and difficult. And do you think there's a chance that Boris Johnson will stand again?
Yes, I wouldn't put anything past him at all. I really wouldn't. I think the whole thing's become so messed up and so, what's the right word? It's got a horrible feeling we're sliding into a sort of more American-style politics where the sort of what people have considered to be the sort of norms of the past are just being bypassed. And people just get away with stuff because they can say populist things, they can behave in a populist way, and I just think it's... I'm over 57, so I don't think things are being done in the way they should, James. I don't know what you feel about it being a slightly younger member of the public.
I'm not that much younger, and I am infuriated by the incompetence at government level. I'm infuriated by a lot of things. I'm turning into Victor Meldrew. I genuinely, I don't believe it.
Well, that is a function of age, I'm afraid.
It is. It's a function of age. And also the other thing which I've found is that watching reruns of Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister allows you to understand that the government and the way that they've operated in the civil service has always been the most extraordinary system, and somebody just needs to write that sort of stuff again, because it would appear as if we are being governed by a sort of crawling, sludgy mess of incompetence.
Well, talking like that is a function of age, but it's also a privilege of age.
Right. Okay, I'll bear that in mind. Daily Mail, talking of age, by George, what a lazy old headline that is. Look who's 9. It's Prince George, he's 9 years old. Great.
Next.
Channel migrants landed in Britain with guns. What I find astonishing is, setting aside that they landed in Britain with guns, is that they landed in Britain and nobody sought to took their fingerprints, nobody sought to check their records, nobody sought to identify who they were and to get proper data on these people, and then nobody sought to keep a check on them as and when they arrived in this country. I find it absolutely staggering that we are governed by the level of stupidity and cretinous behaviour that we are.
Well, I think keeping an eye on people who are desperate to get out of their own countries have probably faked a lot of what they are or who they are on their way to get here, and then faking their way to into this country. I think it's not entirely surprising. It's a very, very difficult job to tell to see who they are.
It can't be that difficult to take a photograph and take a fingerprint, can it?
No, I agree with that. That's just pure incompetence. That should be done at a basic.
So there we go, incompetence. Right, The Guardian. Sunak goes on the attack over Truss on tax as Truss takes poll lead. And then they've got some story about oil. Make some noise, will female GJs ever get their due? Okay. Daily Mirror, cops must now charge the culprits. I don't understand how the BBC, once again, They've made a terrible mistake of judgment. It's taken 27 years to be found out, and now huge amounts of money have been paid out of the BBC, i.e. our pockets, into somebody else's pockets for their incompetence. This is all over Princess Diana's brother wants the police to act over the BBC Panorama interview.
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget that back at the time that this was considered, when Martin Bashir did his interview, it was considered to be one of the biggest coups the BBC had ever had, and it was just considered to be...
Isn't that the case over pretty much every coup that the BBC has had, is that it was brought about by some kind of deception or other? I mean, and this is the problem also within the media, that, you know, when somebody gets an exclusive or a coup, somebody else has had to spill the beans, and there's always something about it. Anyway, meanwhile, the son... Oh, you'll be excited about this. So, the eldest son of... the tragic Big Brother star Jade Goody. So this is Bobby Brazier. He's 19 years old. He's going to be in EastEnders.
Yeah, I'm ecstatic. Yeah.
The Daily Telegraph, no tax cuts until late next year, says Sunak. To be honest, I don't think there's any chance of Sunak making that leadership, to be honest. Morden's revenge, new plot to stop Truss. Penny Morden supporters are orchestrating a Stop Liz Truss campaign to try and prevent the current favourite Tory contest becoming Prime Minister. I do find it almost disgraceful. I find it disgraceful. So Penny Morden, who I think was a really good candidate, the Daily Mail, I don't know what they had on her, but they absolutely rinsed her.
Yeah, well, again, sign of the times.
Okay. BBC, we let Diana down. This is the front page of The Sun, but also apparently you can, we've got some filthy new advice you can eat with your mouth open, according to the Daily Star. The Daily Express, BBC, we let Diana down. It gives the Daily Express an opportunity to put Diana back on the front pages, because it's been a while. And also what's this? There's a feature here in the Daily Telegraph. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. The unbelievable truth behind the burning of Notre Dame. It's a fascinating story. Meanwhile, we're going to talk petrol and fuel and things in a few moments' time. Just very quickly, though, on that story where we're going to see petrol prices remain where they are. Fuel price protesters slowing traffic on the M4, the M5, the M3, the A38 later today, and also across the country. What do you make of it, Ed? Do you support the fuel protesters?
Well, actually, I got stuck in one of these, the one about sort of a month ago on the M4. I got stuck on the Severn Bridge in one of them and was sitting there for about an hour and a half. And I have, normally with this sort of stuff, I don't have any sympathy, but of course, since the fuel prices started going up, I mean, before the fuel protests were just about climate change and all this sort of stuff, now you've got the extra added impetus of fuel prices and the fact that the government, doesn't seem to be doing much about it, although they're not alone. You go across Europe, you travel, prices are the same everywhere. It's not.
Well, they're not. They have done, if you go to Germany, they've actually done something, and they've taken 15, 20, 25, 30p off a litre.
Yeah, I mean, in Germany that might be the case. I haven't driven in Germany, but I have driven in France and I've driven in Spain, and prices there are the same. So, in other words, what I was trying to say is that I do now have some sympathy for this, because it is something which is about a current situation, not about a long-term situation. It's about a short-term situation. I'm not sure about their timing and about when they're doing it and where they're doing it, and the poor holidaymakers are going to get stuck. As I said, having been stuck in it myself, I didn't find myself able to get as angry as I might have normally done.
There we go. All right. Well, we'll get some more thoughts from you in just a few moments' time, and the stories that you've picked out from the papers. That's all coming up here on TalkTV.